Alright YouTube, so we're back today with something I'm very, very excited to talk about. So if you've been following me for a while, you might have heard me say at some point that Final Fantasy IX is one of my favorite within the series. It's up there, man. I don't know if it's top 3 or top 5, because I'm also a big fan of, obviously, Final Fantasy VII, but also like Final Fantasy X and 12, and some other ones that I played, throughout my life. Anyways, yesterday, kind of out of nowhere, it was revealed that there's going to be an animated series around Final Fantasy IX, and I found that kind of surprising, and I mean that in a good way, because I absolutely love this game, but you don't really hear a lot of people talk about it. Like, obviously it has its fans. I'm over here gushing over the goddamn game. But, nobody really talks about, man, Final Fantasy IX is my favorite Final Fantasy. And, every now and then you might see Square Enix kind of address the game in terms of, merchandise or crossovers with stuff like Dissidia and other things like that. You'll see the game pop up here and there, but it doesn't, again, get a whole lot of love. So that's why it kind of surprised me that this was the one they chose to do, an animated adaptation of. Anyways, let's read over this brief article really quickly. Square Enix and Cyber Group Studios announced today that a Final Fantasy IX animated series is underway. French production team Cyber Group Studios is co-producing the series with worldwide distribution and handling merchandise. The animated series adaptation is aimed at introducing 8 to 13-year-olds into the world of Final Fantasy IX, while still catering to old fans alike. According to Cyber Group Studio CEO Pierre Sisman, production for the upcoming series ends around the end of 2021 to early 2022. Fans can expect the Final Fantasy IX animated series to arrive next year. So this article was another reason why I wanted to make this video, outside of just being excited because I'm a fan of Final Fantasy IX. They're apparently trying to appeal to a younger audience and bring them into the world of Final Fantasy IX, make them fans of that world. And why else would you do that unless you plan on doing something with that IP? Now, what they're doing, I don't know. Whether that would be a sequel game or prequel game, a side game, or maybe a remake. Give it the remake treatment. I don't know. And look, maybe they just think it's the best one in terms of the lore and the setting to do an animated series with, but I just think there's something else there because it's super random. It's a 20-something-year-old game that these younger 8 to 13-year-olds probably aren't playing. They're probably on their Fortnites and bullshit. You also have stuff like Final Fantasy VI, which is arguably the second most popular within this series in terms of the fan base and the community. People are big fans of Final Fantasy VI. They wanted that to also get the remake treatment or get it instead of 7. And then you can also just look to other games within the series that have sold a lot more than Final Fantasy IX. So if you were to make an anime of those games, that obviously appeal to a wider audience. And by the way, I have been calling it an anime, but it's referred to as an animated series, and I don't know if that means it's actually going to be a cartoon or more like an actual traditional anime. And looking at Cyber Group Studios' list of things they've made, I don't recognize a goddamn thing. And just looking at a couple of the titles, it does look like it'd be more like a cartoon. Some of the things I'm curious about is, how is this going to be distributed worldwide? Is it going to be on Netflix, which seems the most plausible, as we talked about in the past. Netflix, I believe, is the most, popular streaming service in Japan. But as long as it's on one of the streaming services, Hulu, Netflix, something like that, that'll be great. And also, what is it exactly? Is it just retelling the Final Fantasy IX story, which I'm perfectly fine with. You retell that story over the course of a couple of seasons or some shit, perfectly fine with that. Or are they going to add to it, which could be good or bad, depending. So it all remains to be seen. We're going to be on top of this, my dudes. I'm excited for it. I'll definitely keep you guys updated when there's more info for this. Either way, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't most updated more Final Fantasy IX animated series, possibly an anime. I don't know what's going on here yet. Info, turn on notifications, follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. I'm a Discord. The links to my social networks are in the description. And an outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.